Hi, I'm Helen, and you're listening to Yellow Chair Collective, the podcast. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to Yellow Chair Collective, the podcast. Today, we actually have fellow YCC therapist Asuka Garcia here on the show. Asuka, we both have the last name Garcia.
That's right.
I know. I guess, how did you acquire that last name?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So this is my husband's name.
Mm.
I am originally from Japan. So I'm Japanese, so my Japanese name, original maiden name is Mitani. But when I got married, I acquired my husband's name, and he is Filipino American. But interestingly, when I moved to California, a lot of times people are asking me, "Oh, is your husband Mexican?" And so,
Mm.
yeah, I thought that was interesting experience.
Yeah, the interesting thing about being Filipino is that people often mistake you for being half or
Mm,
biracial, which in some ways we are because we were colonized by the Spanish for 400 to 500 years. So
mhm.
my assumption was that you were married to a Filipino man. And so I'm glad I
You got
double
it right.
checked my assumption. But, we're here to talk to you today, not only about mental health, but about your experience with Taiko, because I know that that plays a really big role in Japanese history, but also Japanese American history. But first and foremost, I'd love for people to get to know you first in the context of a therapist. And so, what got you into this type of work?
Yeah. So my journey goes way back to maybe when I was about 10 years old, I would say. Again, yeah, I'm born and raised in Japan. So all of my family is in Japan. When I was there with my family, so my father started experiencing mental instability at one point, and it kind of just suddenly happened in the way that he was working full time, was very busy, but then one day he just couldn't move physically he couldn't move much. And then at the time we didn't know what was happening, but down the road we found out that it was more like the major episode of major depressive disorder back then. And so since then, I and the rest of the family kind of started seeing how this, mental breakdown can take toll on one person. And the way it happened was pretty drastic for us, including, of course, for himself. So it was a journey of as the rest of the family to support him with how can we help him out in any way. And so, yeah, it got me just attention to see how, mental imbalance can do to one person. What can mental imbalance can do to one person, not only, emotionally, mentally unstable, but also literally physically affects him to the point that he can't walk. Sometimes, like when he had the worst time, then like a partial muscle movement was just not right. So like he felt like a part of his body was almost like paralyzed and all of that. And so, yeah, I kind of just witnessed, how that happens. So yeah, since then I just kind of started growing my interest of, okay, if this can happen to my dad, then who else is experiencing this? And what is this, the mind and body connection? And so, yeah, I was just kind of just genuinely interested in how this happens to, a human being. And then since then, like if this is, if somebody else is experiencing this emotional difficulty or mental, conditions and mental health condition and whatnot, then how can I be a person who can support their recovery journey? And so, yeah, since then I was just generally interested in this field of mental health. And so, when I was in college, I was not sure what to major. And then I realized that, oh yeah, that's what I had been thinking about it. And probably that can be my also major wanting to study. So I decided to go for psychology for undergrad. Um, And then I also took minor as counseling. So then kind of started learning the mental health, mental therapy um, realm. And so, yeah, that has been my journey since then. So mental health has been my kind of main focus. And so I decided to go for social work. My degree is social work instead of marriage and family therapist. And the reason why is that I also realized that in terms of the mental health and wellness, the surrounding of the environment also matters. And so from that aspect, I realized that social work is more of that, like overall, wrapping around with the services that one individual needs um, to support the one's whole wellness. And so, yeah,
Mm.
I went for social work, and social work has variety of, I would say, different field in social work, micro, macro, meso level. But then I just stayed with mental health, specifically mental health field in social work, so I can continue to pursue the interest that I had since I was a child. Yeah.
That's so interesting how you had that unique insight and perspective into your father's own mental health, and that got you interested in the mind-body connection.
Mm.
And I guess, like, since you've become a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW, what have you learned about the mind-body connection and how the mind can really affect the body's health overall?
Yeah, definitely. I learned that, and mind also is affected by everyday environment that we are
Mm.
right surrounded by. So, one thing, for example, maybe one aspect of life, for example, maybe work is not doing well, then, it does affect, first, it probably affects mentally, emotionally, like, oh, I don't want to go, or I don't like certain things, and I'm not enjoying this life and whatnot. And then realize that overall that stress can be stored in our body. And therefore, when it continues to be accumulated, then also body starts understanding, oh, this much of the stress is in a sense my normal. And trying to numb ourselves that way, try to keep going. But at one point we have capacity. And so then, if we are not aware enough, then body kind of just gives up itself and then collapse. And so, and it did happen to me actually for myself one time when I was overworking with my other job. And then I was stressed out emotionally, mentally first, but I kept going because I had to at one point. But then my body gave up, and that got me to very bad backache. And
Mm.
I fainted one night because of the so much pain. I didn't even realize I fainted. And after that, like 1 to 2 weeks, I almost couldn't move and walk much. And so I realized that, okay, as much as I advocate for, mental health for other people, right? I literally experiencing it. My emotional stress can get me physically. And so, yeah, it is really connecting.
Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable about your own, like, backaches and how your mental health can affect your body, because I've definitely experienced that. My first job outside of my MSW program was actually at a DMH site.
Yeah.
And, you said something that was so true. You said at some point you felt like you had to keep working and you had to keep going.
Mhm.
And I felt like it in those moments you feel like you have no choice but to keep
Wow.
going, especially when you're an associate social
Okay.
worker. I don't know what position you were in at the time, but I'm
Yeah, I
assuming
was
it
in
was
a
so.
similar, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're with me. And when you're making very little time, I remember, like, I was staring at my computer finishing my notes and my vision started blurring,
Mm.
had foggy memory. I think that a lot of people discount how stress and, like, what's going on in your environment really does play a role in your body's overall health, because there is a connection between the mind and body. And so in that moment, I guess, how did you begin to take care of yourself? Was it an instant like, okay, I need to take care of my body, or what were the steps that got you to a place where you could be more aware of what your body was telling you, the signals that were coming up?
Yeah. So after that, yeah, like I really have to take, my situation seriously. Like a part of myself back then knew I should take this seriously and I need to
Mm,
turn this, in different way. But I just kept going. A part of me just kept ignoring that message coming from inside me. But yeah, body just couldn't keep going. So I really needed to reconsider how I work. And so, yeah, since then, I mean, first of all, I really had to consider myself, okay, is this lifestyle really for me going forward? I can do it right now. I have been doing it, but then is this really for me? And is this something that I want to do going forward? And so actually, yeah, that really made me think of my next step, to be honest. Yeah.
mm,
And so actually that was the moment. It was also happening during pandemic. And so it was actually my transition moment for me to transition from that type of work style to online mental health therapy, which is with Yellow Chair. And so,
mm,
yeah, it really gave me the opportunity to reflect. Like, yes, I mean, I'm still young in terms of age and maybe I can keep going, but then is this really something that's worthwhile for me to do this,
mm.
knowing how my body's already catching up to it? And I know, and then
Yes.
also, right, I guess another sign you said, what is the sign? That literally, since that backache, I feel when I feel stressed out or maybe working too long and whatnot, this back tells me I start feeling achy after certain hours. And so now I know the body is telling me literally the sign to repent. You're doing too much. You
Mm,
need to do something else or stretch or
oh,
exercise more. And so I think I am more mindful with, in a sense, that body sign
mm.
and then try not to overdo it or try to listen to more that carefully.
Because our job does require long hours of sitting, right? And
Yeah,
so I'm
right.
I'm getting conventionally pretty young, I would assume, but like sometimes when I get up from my chair, my hips just like
Yeah.
sounds like a water bottle that you're like twisting, and it's so sometimes you forget, because I don't know if you feel this way, Asuka, but like as therapists, I just get lost in
Hmm.
someone else's story and I
Yeah.
forget myself. And your body is a vessel to what your mind is carrying. And, for listeners that don't know, therapists go through what's called vicarious trauma, where sometimes we carry what our clients carry. And so I do want to seamlessly transition into Taiko for you, your journey in music, how you foster that sense of care for self, because I know you've also performed in San Diego. So I'd love to hear more about vessels of self care that you use in moments where you do experience stress. And I specifically love for you to talk more about Taiko and how you got into it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um,
Yes, I'm so excited. How I studied Taiko is actually back in around 2010. I was actually in school for Master of Social Work in Hawaii.
mm,
I went to University of Hawaii MSW program. And
mm,
so, yeah, it was first year. Yeah, maybe first year of MSW program. It was through my other Japanese friend who started taking class with Taiko school in Hawaii. And back then I was not really, of course I knew Taiko because that's my, culture and stuff. But, it was just a Japanese things that I know of. I didn't really have particular interest. But then because my friend started doing it, so I kind of started having interest. Oh, that looks fun. That sounds fun. And
mm,
so I joined one of the Sunday class as beginner. And I also got to see the performing teams just practicing, like rehearsing for performance and whatnot. And so that was my first time in a while to see actual taiko performance in front
mm,
of me. And I still can remember that vivid, like the sound vibration that came through my body it was different. Like it kind of almost like boiled my blood again, kind of, I guess, excitement. Like I know this vibration. I know this sound, kind of excitement. That was a really interesting experience. So that really got me instantly. Like, okay, I want to do this. So yeah, that's how I
Mm.
started. And also back in Hawaii, I also used to dance hula, which is, very sacred cultural dance in Hawaii. I loved it. I liked the storytelling part of it. I liked the way they use the dance, to honor, worship their god and whatnot, right? I love that cultural aspect to it. In the meantime, it was still, the Hawaiian culture that I appreciate, but it is not necessarily originally a part of me that I
Mhm.
acquired. And so when Taiko showed up in front of my life, then like it was instant connection. Like, oh, this is my culture. Actually, I forgot. And then I realized that I don't really have much connection if I don't intend to try to connect with my cultural roots. So Taiko really made sense to me quickly. Oh, that's right. This is my culture. And then this is the place I get to reconnect with my identity. And so, yeah, since
Mm.
then I've been playing, so almost maybe 14 years. And so, yeah, my original, how I started is, yeah, probably through more of the reconnecting with my original culture. Still to this day, that is how I feel because then I also get to see other Japanese taiko players also playing with us. And, whenever we meet each other, then we already close. We're already friends from the get-go. And so that's very beautiful.
It is really
And
beautiful.
yeah. So yeah, that's one thing that how I started. And in terms of taiko and mental health, I also realized that as I start playing more, well, first of all, right, it is more like in general physical health aspect to it, because it is actually, as much as it looks like we are only mainly moving our upper body, but then
Yeah.
for us to move the upper body so strongly and powerfully, we need to also have good strength in our core. And so it
Yes.
ends up being the whole body exercise. So in general, that's already good for physical and mental health.
Sorry to interrupt you, Asuka,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
for those of you who are listening and don't know what taiko is, it's an
Yes.
ancient Japanese percussion drum, and so it's this huge drum. I just want you to imagine like really, really big drum, and you're just like banging on that thing. And so it does take a lot of abdominal strength and leg strength and upper body, f-
Yeah.
stamina to be able to sustain that rhythm for long periods of time. So
Yeah, yeah,
continue.
yeah. Thank you for adding
Yeah.
that. Definitely. So yeah, so physical health aspect to it is, yeah, definitely. It's the whole body exercise we get to do. And
Yeah.
then the other part is, yeah, like we have been talking about the mind and body connection.
Mm.
Maybe when you see the performance, it looks like, maybe it may look like we are just naturally moving our body to the sound and looks so easy. But actually behind the scene, it's a lot of mindfulness activity, to be honest, because it's so interesting when you try to play, right? You already have imagination of, oh yeah, this is how I want to play, or I can play, right? How I want to move my body like this. Looks so powerful and strong and so perfect. When actually we try to hit, we instantly notice that our body also has its will and that it is not aligned with how we want to do in our
Mhm.
mind. And so it takes the time to kind of practice to align what my body wants in my body and how my body understands how I want to move. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's interesting those, intentional engagement with our body parts at the same time as our mind too. And so, yeah, that way it's through a lot of mind and body awareness activity actually that's happening.
How long did it take your body and mind to kind of realign in that way? Because I noticed that, when you talk about it, for a lot of musicians, right, there's an image of what you want your body to do and certain cues, especially with the rhythm of being in accompaniment with other people. How long did that take for you to like get acquainted with that? And how much hours of practice, what mindset do you get to go into for that?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it depends on the person's maybe like background in terms of the music education or all those stuff. But I think if you consistently show up maybe like once a week to the class and whatnot, then you will get to build the routine of practicing a basic movement, and then try to engage with like, okay, how I wanna do this versus how my body moves, like how do I connect it together. So I would say maybe like, let's see, 2 to 3 months.
Mm.
It's a gradual, I guess, building habit of it's also kind of habit of building unconsciously, like connecting mind and body. And so it is a
Yeah.
lot of repetitive movement. But yeah, 2 to 3 months, and probably you will feel a lot more comfortable with knowing how my body wants to work versus sometimes how I want my body to work and how do it together. Yeah,
When you talk about it, your face just comes alive, like you have the biggest smile on your face. Wait, so you've been doing taiko now for how many years?
I would say 14 years since
Uh,
2010. I know time flies. I don't feel it that way.
Yeah, because when you think about it, like you got started when you were in the University of Hawaii. So you started when you were very young, all things considered, maybe early 20s,
Mm.
and then it's followed since then. And I guess like when you carry a practice for that long, what's changed about you since you've been practicing this for over 14 years? What have you learned about discipline, self-control, showing up, etc., especially moving from Hawaii to San Diego? Like that's to continue to carry on that practice, that takes a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah. I mean, I think another great aspect of Taiko is also community aspect,
Mm,
because especially here in the States, most of the American taiko drumming is ensemble style, meaning that there are a group of people, making a team and then playing a piece together.
mm,
And so, I mean, there are some solo taiko players, of course, but then mostly we actually have different types of taiko, actually. Like the smallest one called shime is like a bass keeper, and then the middle-sized taiko, and also, of course, the biggest one, and all of that. And so we have different parts, and each member are participating in it, trying to connect. And so I think what I learned is if I have to keep doing this by myself or like individual activities, then I get bored so quickly. But because of the community that I had, even back then in Hawaii or in Hawaii too, here in California, that's where I just want to go to connect with
mm,
people and, continue to learn from each other, continue to connect with each other. And I realized that itself is sometimes enough when I am not feeling well or just having good days, just showing up to the practice and,
mm,
somebody to talk to or somebody to have fun together.
mm,
That is, yeah, very big part of this community that this type of community cultivates, I believe, not only at my team, but also just across the board. When it comes to taiko community, it is a place of gathering with people who
mm,
have the same interest. We always talk about taiko a lot, even if in the different teams. And so, yeah,
mm.
I think that helped me keep going. Yeah.
Uh,
So that was big. Yeah. And then especially my transition of taiko from Hawaii to California is a little bit unique because so when I was in Hawaii, I met my husband through taiko. And
mm.
so he's a Filipino American, but then he is a pro at drumming, like much, much better than me.
He's a
He's
pro
been,
drummer.
yeah, he's a pro taiko
Oh,
drum. So he has been playing since 1998. So over 20 years,
oh, cool.
much more experience than mine. So I met him through Hawaii, and when he moved to San Diego, he wanted to have his own group. So he has his own group now, which I am a part of. And so my Taiko journey in Hawaii kind of naturally continued when I moved here. And yeah, I was accepted by the groups he already cultivated in San
So
Diego.
cool.
So yeah, that was very unique experience that I'm still appreciative of. And yeah, so yeah, from that aspect, to me specifically, it is also, a community, but most likely also, family, which is,
Yeah,
because my husband is doing it, of course, but also through this community of the group, literally, almost like I'm adopting those, Taiko members as my family member naturally. And then, yeah, doing this thing together. So it is very special for sure.
so sweet to have something that you're curious about, that you have a question mark about, that's also embedded in your own culture. Follow a question mark about that, and then to meet your husband, and then to like cultivate that love together helps me understand why I got so involved in Taiko as an art, because
Mm.
usually it really does bring people together.
Yeah, yeah.
And something as beautiful as meeting someone that will eventually become the love of your life. It's so cool to hear you talk about that. I do want to transition more into wellness practices and things that you do to take care of yourself under high crisis moments. And so, as a person that also really, I'm hearing from even your practice in Taiko, is you keep coming back for the community, and the practice itself
Mm.
keeps you well. You see people, you engage in a musical practice, common interests with other folks and individuals. But when you're under a lot of anxiety, sometimes it's hard to see like life outside of the anxiety.
Mm.
So, how do you practice mindfulness as a person that has been a therapist for many years? Like, how do you stay calm in the middle of crisis and anxieties?
Very good question. And it's also not easy question to answer, right? To be honest,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it is, as much as we preach to our clients, right? Okay, resting is so important. Sometimes we're the ones who are working hardest, going above and beyond for everybody else. And
yes, that's so true.
I know, end up sacrificing ourselves. So I gotta be honest, that it is also my, yeah, very like a daily effort that I have to put. Okay, it is not sometimes, it doesn't come to me naturally.
Mm,
But yeah, my intention is whenever I feel anxious or just so much happening that is, overwhelming me, I try to first of all try to intend to give myself the permission to rest. Like it is
mm,
okay. I allow myself to rest right now. I just need
mm,
my space. As much as I feel like I have to keep going, I decide for myself to rest. I think that kind of, I guess, intention I try to put.
mm,
And that means maybe then I may be not responding to any social media, or I may not be responding to even text message and whatnot for the rest of
mm,
the night and whatnot. But, kind of just create own bubble. Like, okay, this is my space right now that nobody doesn't have to come. Who can I come? And so that way, kind of try to, yeah, I guess ground myself that way. Try to find my own peace first, so then I can show up better to whoever or in need of me next day.
mm,
Recently, I'm also trying to practice, which is difficult, but trying to practice is, more tapping into the power of leaning into other people. The other day I was talking with other Asian American group as well, but then I think we have this Asian mindset of sometimes, I have to do this by myself. I feel bad for seeking support from everybody else because they're also already working hard. Therefore, I should be doing this. I should be taking care of this
mm,
by myself. It runs to my head as well. try to take a lot on myself, not knowing that I may not have the capacity. So intentionally, okay, wait a minute, like, who can I tap into as a resource or support right now? And then at least ask. If they're not available, that's okay. But then at least I ask. And if they can help me, great. And in that way, trying to be more mindful with connecting with others that way. Um, yeah, to lean into them when I need them, my people around me.
That
Yeah.
must have taken a lot of work to
Right?
undo that,
Yeah.
right? Because even in Japanese American culture, like a lot of it is honoring, being in a place of like being able to come from a place of honor for yourself and for your family. How did you begin to cultivate community in that way? What was your process like, the messy middle, as they say?
I think this is more like through daily conversation with my husband. I
Mm,
think both individually try to take a lot of responsibility on our own. And sometimes we forget to check in, and that becomes, misalignment with each other. And
is
that was happening. So throughout the year, we are still practicing, not perfect, obviously. I think at one point we kind of gathered together, okay, hey, this is not working, so what can we do? So we talked about, yeah, let's acknowledge that, when it's a lot, then it's a lot. So it's okay to acknowledge to each other, and then for help from each other, but also knowing that if both of us are still overwhelmed, then who else is available for us? And again, maybe Taiko could be a great already example that we already have a community, fortunately. So, how can we also how can I allow myself to reach out to them, and at least maybe, just catch, hey, this is what's happening. Can you just give me half an hour? So then can we just chat? So for me
mm,
to be able to process some certain things and whatnot. And so even just that itself is helpful. And so it was a lot of, yeah, I guess those moments that we realize that, okay, something is not going right. We need to figure out what's happening. From there, okay, what can happen from here kind of conversation.
it's so beautiful how you both have such an open dialogue and communication.
We tried, yeah. Sometimes it's hard, and it was hard at the very beginning.
Mm,
Um, I'm eldest, by the way, of the family. So yes, maybe as an eldest syndrome and whatnot, I
mm,
have certain, I guess, sense of responsibility that I should be taking care of. And then he as Asian man, man, he has
mm.
his own way of, I think, yeah, feeling sense of responsibility. So yeah, it was quite, yeah, it took a while for us to figure out, okay, what is this gap that we are not seeing, but we are feeling as uncomfortable with each other. Something is not aligned.
That's so interesting. When you talk about being the eldest in your family and
Mm.
him being like an Asian man, I guess how do those roles play a role or played a role in your marriage?
I think I was just naturally in my household. I already assumed my role, and it could be including a gender role as, maybe a wife of this, household, like as a female partner. How can I contribute to this, this relationship? Maybe then that meaning I take care of house chores and whatnot, like
Mhm,
those traditional gender roles. At first, like I think I had that mindset.
mhm,
And so, yeah, I think that kept me kind of thinking, okay, then after my work, then what comes next? Okay, then is it like cooking dinner? Maybe washing dishes and whatnot. And then that was, a lot. That was getting a lot to me, not
mm.
realizing that actually that was narrative that I was playing for myself. It was actually that expectation didn't necessarily come from my husband necessarily, actually, but it was more like my inheritance. I guess the mindset as Japanese women should be doing certain things. And so, um, it was kind of going on for a while. And then, I don't remember when, but then one time I exploded. Hey, this is not working. Like, I'm so frustrated. I'm so overwhelmed. And
Mm,
so that conversation happened. And then I realized that he reiterated with me that from his own background, he didn't have the expectation of particular gender role of me as women
mm,
have to do certain things. So like, okay, that kind of just like it removed a lot of, pressure off on my chair.
mm.
That's right. You
That's
didn't
so
really tell me.
crazy.
Yeah, but that was me taking
Yes.
responsibility for myself and for him. Maybe
Mm,
not necessarily coming from him. And so that
mm,
was one moment for me. And then for him, I mean, if I can summarize maybe his experience from my perspective is that as an Asian man, maybe he was also, having the maybe possibly pride of, always have to present power, strongly, responsibly. And so when he is not feeling well internally, it took a while for him to communicate that with me. And so I couldn't see what's going on. But what I saw is that he is angry or he is visibly upset or he is sometimes maybe somewhat shut down and withdrawn. But then I couldn't see beyond it, like what's happening. And I think I mean, back he shared a little bit with me was that maybe a part of it is, he's that stereotype, typical image of men not talking about emotions. And he just didn't learn or he didn't know how to communicate the internal emotional, you know, um, whatever that's happening inside him to me. And
mm,
so he was maybe, putting a lot of pressure for himself to have to somehow process it and feeling okay internally when
mm,
he's not emotionally okay inside. And so that was also happening. And then again, of course, an explosion happened at one point between us. So we had to kind of figure out, okay, what's happening. I am not seeing what you may be experiencing possibly, right, from my perspective. And so, yeah, it was a lot of those conversations
mm.
that slowly, I guess, kind of peeled.
Slowly peeled away.
Yeah, the
Yes.
onions, yes, onion skins. Finally, like, okay, we understand.
That's actually so helpful for you to share, Asuka, because I think that a lot of people don't really openly in dialogue talk about what they believe certain roles to be in any relationship, and in therapy client relationships, sometimes clients will tell the therapist, like, I want to be the best client. And it's not even an expectation for the therapist and the therapist's expectation for the client, vice versa. But in the same way, in a marriage, both of you are coming in with very different life experiences, very different cultural backgrounds, and what a woman should be and what a man should be. And it's actually helping me in my own relationship as well, of like, I wonder what that conversation would look like with my partner. So that's so interesting to think about. One of my favorite things to ask folks is, what are 3 questions you could have asked someone before you married them? It sounds like your number 1 question would have been, what do you believe your role is in
Mm,
marriage? You know? And so that's
yeah, yeah, because that's based on a lot of assumptions, right? I realized, yeah,
mm,
those roles are kind of just, yeah, inherited assumption that we just believe in certain way because
mhm.
of how we grew up. And yeah, sometimes it could be very different for the other person.
Yes.
Yeah, I realize.
Um,
So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me. And yeah, I mean, through this marriage too, like just kind of discovering each other. Because even if we are both Asian, obviously, I'm Japanese, he's Filipino. Yeah, again, our background is very different.
mhm.
And yeah, it is very interesting discovery.
Mm. let's close off because I'm realizing I took up more time
No
for
problem.
you than I realized. And so I just wanted to say thank you, Asuka, for your time, for your vulnerability, for talking about Taiko, and for talking about your mental health journey. I didn't expect this level of vulnerability, but I can see why people are drawn to you, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about you. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for your time,
Thank
and
you,
it
Helen.
was an honor and pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, this is one of my rare occasions to get to talk about Taiko and mental health together. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.